And we're live with the second part of this double header and we might give you a little behind the scenes action as to why we're doing a double header, is that there was a balls up in the order in which I watched the episodes. I watched episode 2 first by mistake.
Yeah, because I told him to, because what he'd previously been going by was doing them in the broadcast order, which, NBC liked to mess with the broadcast order in the early time because they were trying to find the episodes they thought would do better in the ratings and stick them first, even if it screwed up the story. The most egregious of which happens in the third season. So that one I'm going to just have to talk to Ben about, what the first scene of the episode is, so that he's watching the right one, because otherwise everything will be terrible.
You're like really early on, just like really casual.
Well, what?
When they you evidently you're not following.
I think I might know what you mean, but we'll talk about it. Anyway, okay, so we are up to the actual second episode of the second season, but the third broadcast of Homicide, called Black and Blue, which was broadcast on January 20th, 1994, and was written by James Yoshimura, based on a story by series executive producer Tom Fontana, and was directed by Chris Manal, who also directed the previous episode that we talked about earlier. So, Pembleton continues his investigation into the shooting death of small-time drug peddler Charles Cox, who he suspects was killed by police during a botched crack house raid. As the involved police officers turn over their guns for testing, the press reports heavily on the story, which results in pressure from the department heads to solve the case. Pembleton aggressively questions several officers, but none are cooperative. G is angry with Pembleton's focus on the police and demands civilian suspects be pursued. Howard and Bayless canvass the neighborhood of the shooting and find most residents do not trust the police, who they feel are responsible for the death of one of their own. However, one woman named Dale tells Bayless her grandson, Lane Staley, witnessed the shooting. Staley I'm not actually sure that it was her grandson or whether she knew the grandmother, because he said a different name, but anyway. Staley is brought into the station for questioning, and while Pembleton plans to question him as an eyewitness, G demands he be treated as a suspect. Frustrated that G refuses to consider the possibility of police shooting, Pembleton assures him he will get a confession out of Staley whether he did it or not. Pembleton starts the interrogation calm and polite, but gradually becomes angrier, frightening Staley. Pembleton makes him feel responsible for allowing Cox to be at the crack house and uses that guilt to break Staley down and confess, even though he is obviously innocent. Pembleton gives the confession to G, who is conflicted, especially when Pembleton compares it to past police practices of white detectives getting confession from black suspects, no matter what the cost. Ultimately, G tears up the confession and instead visits Staley at jail. Staley admits to G that Lieutenant Jimmy Tyron shot Cox in the back without warning while Cox was running away. Pembleton and Bayless arrest Tyron at his home, where they confiscate a gun and bullets that appear to match those used against Cox. The arrest deeply saddens Howard, who had previously had an affair with Tyron. The affair ended because Tyron was married with children, but Howard continues to harbor romantic feelings for him. Meanwhile, Munch repeatedly and loudly declares his love for his girlfriend Felicia, much to the annoyance of his lonely partner Bolander. The two confiscate a live tropical fish from the murder scene of a dead drug dealer. Upon learning it will not be used as evidence, Munch decides to give it as a gift to Felicia, who loves fish. However, she breaks up with Munch after the fish ends up eating all her other fish. The now lonely Munch turns to Bolander for comfort, but finds the tables have turned and that Bolander has met a local waitress named Linda. The two get along very well and bond over their mutual love of music. The episode ends with Linda and Bolander getting together to play music. Linda plays the violin while Bolander plays the cello. So, yeah.
There was never... Although that happened, I'm sure that Bolander might have felt that there might have been other people there. Because I was surprised when it was just her.
No, I doubt he was surprised. I think he pretty much knew what she was asking him.
Okay.
I mean, maybe not, but it seemed like to me. That she said something about how that, not that she snuck in, but that she basically knew somebody that gave her access to it. So it wasn't like it was an organized practice of group session or something.
I like the character of G, and I thought that it was a good arc for him. That inner conflict, as you described, between the blue loyalty to the Force and the black. And he mentioned living through in the 1960s, and he said he had to make that choice between the Force and the black people who were very angry with MLK's death. Well, murder.
And at the same time, so you have sort of a double thing, because he also accuses Pemberton of showing him up in front of the bosses, who are mostly white.
Yeah.
So he sort of accuses him of disloyalty on both fronts. And there's definitely a lot of back and forth with Pemberton and G in this episode, which I talked about in the last one. They sort of set that up, and then you have it taken to the next level. At the end of the episode, there's still a ton of tension between them.
There's something else as well. It's not just black and blue, it's black, blue, and Italian.
Yeah. La Familia.
Mm.
Yeah. The interrogation scene of Staley, it's a great scene. It's amusing to me because his name was Lane Staley, who was just the same name as the guy from Alice in Chains. This is the scene that actually, if I recall correctly, was the first thing I showed Ben of Homicide, and I've shown it to people when the subject was about like how somebody who's an ESFP type could be successful as a police detective, like what would they get out of it or whatever, and I showed them the scene of him getting his interrogation, because it's the whole thing is a performance. There's a goal in mind, but it basically is an improv session where Pemberton is pulling things out that he thinks will emotionally affect the suspect to the point where he can manipulate him into giving a confession, because he basically figures out pretty quickly, talking to this dude, that he sizes him up and basically says, I can, I'm good enough to crack this guy and have him admit to this even though he didn't do it. So he has the full confidence he can get that to happen, and to do it, he pulls out a lot of sort of cliche type things, some of which may be true, some of which might not be. They never really tell how much of the things he says about his own personal experience are actually true. I suspect probably most of it is, but we talked about before, like in 3 Minute Adina, how the Araber, presented Pemberton as being like this, hoity-toity type, like he's looking down on the Araber, like he's better than him because he's this New York guy, and he's more upper class than him or whatever. And in this episode, Pemberton appeals to Staley from the opposite point of view, like, I'm from the streets just like you, but I wanted to be a policeman so that people that are black would have a fairer treatment from the police. And that may not even really be true, but it doesn't matter. It's the tactic he's using, and he's not just talking to Staley, as we said. He's also, that's also a message to G, who's watching the whole thing. So, yeah, there's a lot of, that's what I love about, this episode and in Homicide in general, that there's always a lot of stuff going on. There, there's the basic lines being spoken, but there's a lot of stuff going into it, back and forth between characters, and everybody has their own perspective. So there's a lot of cool dynamics that way.
I think the episode, the only thing that can be questioned is the believability of somebody who knows they didn't commit the murder confessing to it.
Yeah, at that point, and this is not the first time we had a similar thing, because we had the previous episode where the guy turned himself in because a cop got shot. That was when Chris Thorman got shot. And when he found out that he was, a possible suspect, he came in because he was like, I didn't want to get accidentally shot by a cop, resisting arrest. because if they thought he did it, there was the idea that, well, they could just decide to shoot him. So he figured it was better to come in. So in this guy's case, what he says is basically that, Tyron, the lieutenant, threatened him, basically said, if you rat me out, I'll kill you. And he took him seriously. As he knows where I live, he knows all the places I go, everybody I know, my family, and so I'm not going to rat this guy out. And under the pressure of Pembleton in that scene, he really does mourn for his friend's life, and at the same time, he's probably at that point thinking, I'm better off taking the fall for something I didn't do, than living in this fear of what's going to happen. Even if I don't say anything, are they going to just decide to come shoot me anyway because they think I might talk? There's that fear. Yeah, that fear that's manifesting in him, and Pembleton takes advantage of that and grabs the fear and puts it exactly where he wants it to put it. Says, take responsibility for this.
I'll take my criticism back. That's good writing. I'll take my criticism back because that is believable then.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's believable. I think it's easy for someone to say who has never been in that position that they wouldn't do it, but then on the same token, a part of the dynamic in this episode is they're saying because of the relationship between the community and the police that there's this feeling like we're not going to get a fair shake no matter what. So everything you do in this is a gamble of what's going to end up happening to you. And that will be explored many times over the course of the series. But yeah, that scene, I think, when they did in the final season DVD, they actually had a little sort of roundtable discussion with James Yoshimura, Tom Fontana, and David Simon, and each one of them introduced their favorite scene or one of their favorite scenes from the show, and that they had a hand in writing. And Tom Fontana's choice was a scene from 3 Minute Dina in the box, and James Yoshimura's choice was this scene with the Pembleton interrogating Staley. David Simon's choice we'll get to much later in the show, because he hadn't joined the writing staff of the show yet at this point. He was the writer of the book that the show was based on, but he didn't actually join the writing team until the 4th season. Anyway, so yeah, that's one of the best scenes to me, and again another example of Pembleton's greatness in the box and Andre Braugher's great acting in playing him, because he makes me not know how much of what he's saying is true. I believe the parts where he's talking to G and it's coming from real emotion, but then how he manipulates him, and then instantly snaps out of it, he acts like he's about to break down crying like the suspect is, and then he suddenly starts going back into serious mode and writing the you are responsible for the murder of C.C. Cox, Yeah. So he's you could say cold-blooded at the same time that he actually is having an emotional experience. So it's kind of the best, or not the best, but the both sides of the sensation and the feeling.
Right. And it's very good acting from Andre Braugher in that, as you said, during the scene in the box, you don't necessarily know how much is true, but you see it's definitely genuine afterwards in the scene with G.
Right. And again, you have where Bayless ends up being mostly a spectator, sort of a prop for Pembleton. But at the end, you can tell the way he's looking at him that once again, he's sort of, in one hand, he's sort of a little bit scared of what Pembleton is doing, but he also has a certain amount of awe of what he's able to do as a detective, and as an interrogator, or whatever you call it. So in the first episode, he referred to his interrogation as an act of salesmanship.
Mm.
In this episode, it was less about sales as it was just a straight up emotional manipulation. So he's shown himself capable of doing that also. And then of course we had Munch and Bolander stuff, and the continued saga of Munch and Felicia, which we have up to this point never seen. We only have so far we've seen Bolander's girlfriends, the ones he's gone out with, but Munch's on again, off again girlfriend remains off camera. So it's kind of amusing that we have only his perspective, whether things are going good or bad, and then Bolander we see in all his awkward glory with the women he's actually going out with. So. But yeah, it was another nice touch. The way they did the ending with using the music that they were playing together as the backdrop for the scene of the arrest of the lieutenant and all of that.
Can the actor that plays Bolander actually play the cello?
No. Well, actually, I
Okay.
don't know for sure whether he can or not, but he didn't in that scene.
Right.
That much I do know, because it's actually in these production notes. It says that cellist Zuil Bailey served as body double for Ned Beatty in the scenes with Bolander playing cello. Bailey was studying at Baltimore's Peabody Conservatory at the time, and his appearance on Homicide led to further collaborations with Tom Fontana, including a recurring guest appearance for Bailey on Fontana's drama series Oz. And the actor who played Lane Staley is best known for his part as Preston Burke on the medical drama series Grey's Anatomy. And Juliana Margulies was Nurse Carol Hathaway on the medical drama series ER. So yeah, both of them went on to be on other shows.
There she is, and there are her eyebrows.
And there's a quote actually in here of Andre Braugher about that interrogation scene I was talking about. And he says, "I didn't dare judge my character before I did that scene. Andre Braugher doesn't judge Frank Pemberton about being right or wrong. It's a way for me to remain blessedly free of conscience. But for me, the beauty of that scene was that we really dared to get into it. Typically in TV shows, they skim over the edges of issues like water spiders spouting platitudes and spouting unearned, clarifying emotions. But there were no," this is kind of ironic, he says, "there were no violin strumming in Black and Blue." Of course, there actually is at the end of the episode, but not in the scene he was talking about. Yeah, because she plays violin and Bolander plays cello. But yeah.
Speaking of, if you haven't heard the cello song opening, well, I think you've watched some Angels, so you did. The opening for Angel cello sounds really awesome.
Yeah, I thought that had a good theme. And brief stuff attached that the investigation of fellow police officers was based on a real life investigation chronicled in David Simon's book. However, in the real case, it was Detective Donald Worden, that Bolander's character is based, that handled the actual real life investigation. So, yeah, obviously there's a case where they took creative license there because they wanted to have Pemberton be the one that got to have the dramatic moment when it came to that investigation, and add that tension with him and G and the racial aspect and stuff. Because Detective Worden is a white dude. He's the big man like Bolander, so. And even bigger, in fact, than Ned Beatty is. So he's like 6'6" or something like that. Right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's a big man.
So the real life guy.
Yeah, the detective that Bolander's character was based on, Donald Worden.
I've got a little bit of trivia for you. In England, you used to have to be 6 foot plus in order to be a policeman.
Yeah. I think there's been some police departments in America that have had similar things.
Right. Oh yes. Now we can talk about put some. This, I mean,
Talk about what?
he needed a better pen. Look at the letters. Look at the numbers.
Well, he was kind of emotional too,
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Like I said, it's always was my suspicion that that those unnamed aides that appear in the background would go back and erase it and write it neater after the detective left. That was part of their job.
It would
And
have
again,
been
you see that the continuity with having the previous cases that we've seen be still up on the board, like Berger and Jake, the police dog. Berger was the one he put down in the first episode.
It would be an interesting quirk if it was actually Bolander that would like redo them because he's ISTJ and he was complaining about little things like.
Yeah, I think with him, probably wouldn't take the time to do that unless it was his own cases. But if you notice, see, there's a few. I get to cheat a little bit because there's a website that took some pictures of the board in various episodes, but I noticed, but that kind of clarifies it that in the first season, Bolander has the most open cases. Most names in red are under his name, and of course one of them was the one that he argued with Dr. Blythe about the old man that the wife pushed him down the stairs after he had a heart attack, and she said would stay up under his name in red forever if he didn't pursue the case. And in the next episode, it's still up there. So another great detail that Homicide does.
Right. That's pretty an all-round solid episode. So what would you give it out of 10? 10?
I guess I'd probably give it a 9 out of 10, and I think everything in it is well done. The only thing to me is, part of when I judge things, I do have an emotional component about it also, and there's also a part of me that likes to have twists to things. So the only flaw I would say was that he was a little too easily wrapped up, with the lieutenant being the one that did it. I think they could have gone in a different angle, and also the whole thing with his affair with Howard is like, I can sort of see like they introduced that because they wanted to give you a little more of an insight into her character or her past, but to me it just sort of comes off as being this kind of extraneous awkwardness that doesn't really add much to the episode. But those are kind of minor quibbles.
Yeah. For me, though,
it's not one of the episodes that at the end that I was just like, oh, that is just perfect, but it's really good. And like that, the scene with Pimbleton and Staley's interrogation to me is one of the very best scenes. So if you isolated that, it was, I would definitely give it a 10. So, but as an episode overall, I would say 9. And then the last one that I didn't give a grade to, See No Evil, I would probably give that more like a 7. But
yeah, for me, it's you don't necessarily need a twist every episode. What it hung on was the arc of G.
Right.
It was his turning point.
And that's the strength of it is, especially the scenes between G and Pembleton, and then Pembleton scenes like, they're really sort of the stars of this one. In fact, I'm not even sure that Lewis and Corsetti were in this episode. If they were, it was just in the background. What?
G and Pembleton, the actors, both really awesome. Yeah.
Morgan said the actors of G and Pembleton are both awesome actors. Can't argue with that.
You also
absolutely not.
Movie, which I'm not going to focus on specific events, but in the movie, G gets to play a little more different character, and you can see the actor, do a different part.
Yeah.
and be good at it.
And I I've seen Andre Braugher in some things other than Pendleton since then too, and he's just one of those actors that just like commands the scene no matter who he's playing, even if it's something that's kind of dumb, like that show he's on now, the Brooklyn Nine-Nine thing. Like the show itself is not that good, but the scenes he's in are still watchable because of him.
Oh, dead air.
What, did my
Yeah.
sound cut out?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Oh, well, I was just saying that the Andre Braugher, like, is commanding in scenes no matter what character he's playing. Like, I've seen him in other things, and it's the same. So even on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, a show that's not really that good, his scenes still are good because of him. And he was also on a show called Men of a Certain Age that I probably would have been able to get into more, except I don't like Ray Romano. So it was him, Ray Romano, and Scott Bakula, and I like Andre Braugher and Scott Bakula, but I don't like Ray Romano, so it was hard for me to get into that because it's like, there's that.
Well, I don't know. There's a little side thing. Scott Bakula, for some reason, acted terribly in Star Trek Enterprise. I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, I really didn't see much of that because at the time when that show started, it was on UPN network, which we didn't have an affiliate for here, so I couldn't see it. And yes, kids, this was before the days of like shows being available on demand on the internet. So I didn't have a way to see that show until much later, and then I just didn't ever really bothered. So I've seen maybe a few scenes of it, and that's it. So I can't really speak to. But I don't know. Maybe it was just a paycheck for Bakula.
Oh yeah.
Who knows?
Apparently, he was a big fan of Star Trek.
Yeah.
'Cause-
Well, I mean, and that's the thing is, some even good actors are sometimes miscast, and sometimes they're just in a role where they just never really grab hold of the role, and they just weren't right for the part. So that may have been the case with that.
Having said that, he was quite good in Quantum Leap.
Yeah.
So, anyhow, we are slightly digressing.
Yeah. Well, did you have anything else to add about? You didn't give your rating. What would you say?
I would give it a 9.
All right. Yeah.
Because my only slight query, like you answered that, this idea that he was scared about a cop killing him because the frighteners were put on him. So that answers that.
Yeah, I mean that's my
Slight doubt I
speculation based on what I interpreted the episode. It's not, again, it's one of those things that's kind of left up to the audience to interpret. If that's what was going through his mind. But I think it was more about featuring just how skilled Pendleton was at being able to emotionally manipulate somebody in the box. So there are some suspects, obviously, that he's had or will have in future episodes that wouldn't have fallen for that wouldn't have done that. But that's the part of the skill of the detective is knowing who he would be able to get that with and who he wouldn't.
Yeah, it also depends like how much they are a hardened criminal, how long they've been through this process.
Yeah, in fact, in a way, he kind of sets himself up because when he tells Bayless, all we did was some small stuff, or basically he's confirming the fact that he's just a small-time criminal. He's not a hardened. he's not a big-time guy. He's not someone who's experienced with police interrogations, and he's not, they're not looking across at him and going, okay, this guy's going to be tough to break. Pendleton looks at him, and like I said, he sized him up real quick. That's why he tells G right before he goes in there, you want this one, you got it, because he knows he can get it.
Yeah, because you could just size him up.
Yep.
Like I said, you can tell from someone's body language, and he would be able to tell. I mean, again, police officers can tell when somebody is like a hardened case or somebody who's acting up.
Yeah, when he does in the first episode, when he was telling Bayless, you can tell that he's guilty because he fell asleep,
Right.
The guy that was in the box waiting to be questioned, fell asleep, and he said, "A guilty man left alone in the box falls asleep."
Really?
Yeah, you don't remember that?
Yeah, I feel that's, to me, that's like counterintuitive because
It's because you are.
Lunch counterintuitive?
you know what I mean. Like somebody who's guilty would be worried about. Well, it depends what type they are. I mean, if they're an SP, it might be, oh, just another lie.
Someone who's guilty is like knows they're caught. You know.
Yeah, I think that was kind of his point. Is he's saying like, they might act like that initially, which is what that guy did when they first captured him. He's all scared and nervous and stuff, but then when they leave him alone for a long time, he falls asleep. So he's basically saying like a guy that was innocent, would be like, hey, where are you guys? Come back in here because I need to, prove that I'm innocent. I need to get out of here. I didn't do this. There's more of a sense of urgency, whereas that guy is thinking, he's not in that frame of mind. He's thinking, okay, they got me. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you've seen a lot more of these things than I have, and
some of it, is me, trying to interpret based on what they say because they don't always spell everything out. But yeah, that again, like when I said when they kind of spout those one-liners like that, most of those are right out of the book, So you can kind of tell the difference between the stuff that's like things the writers added, that's more kind of personal information versus when they're talking in sort of cop lingo or here's sort of my philosophy of the way things work. A lot of those things were right out of the book. Like the one I referred to in the previous episode when Lewis said, you go when you're supposed to go and anything else is homicide.
right. So I've got nothing more to add. So Jeff, what is the next episode and how does it start?
It is called A Mini Splendored Thing, I believe, and I don't remember how it starts. So I'll have to find that and then tell you. So before you watch the next one.
So is it about love?
In a manner of speaking, there might be some parts of it that are
You should say that love is a many splendid.
Well, right, that's where it comes from. But it's like most Homicide episodes, there's a bit of cynicism in the title. So,
However, folks, the next video that we will review will be a Blake 7-1 and then another Blake 7-1, so we can get back on an equal footing.
Okay. Well, yeah. So, see you next time.
See you, folks.
Bye.
I'm gonna press stop now.